I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Anatomy of a Movie here on the Popcorn Talk Network. If you haven't already done so, subscribe on not AfterBuzz TV, although you should subscribe there too. YouTube.com/Popcorn Talk Network, and we are now on SoundCloud and of course on iTunes. All the Popcorn Talk content is there. It's free for you to listen to watch. However you want to get us, we're there. And so today I am here talking about Unfinished Business, the 2015 Vince Vaughn movie, also with Dave Franco, Sienna Miller, Tom Wilkinson, Nick Frost, and James Marsden. Now, I am doing this movie solo. Unlike, with Anatomy of a Movie, we usually have a panel, and it's a panel discussion talking about each of these movies at length, ranging from acting to cinematography to obviously story and everything else in between. Now, for me, this time of year is actually a good time of year. I enjoy these types of movies. I did Hot Tub Time Machine 2 by myself, and although it wasn't the most raved about movie in existence, I actually enjoyed it, and I wanted to discuss it, hopefully with people that were equally pleased with the movie. And the same can be said for Unfinished Business. To me, if you guys, the slogan, right? Best business trip ever. And to me, I love road trip movies, starting with movies like literally Road Trip, right? I mean, that's a classic. Dumb and Dumber. Dumber Number 2 is also a road trip movie. That one, I get it, wasn't as great. It tried to be too much like the first one, literally pretty much beat for beat, and wasn't. In some ways, I guess you can't call Hangover necessarily a road trip movie, but in some ways it is. So a ton of great road trip movies. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, right? That in itself was a road trip movie. It's basically anytime a character or two characters have to kind of go on a journey, and they go through various cities and locations and whatever else. And most oftentimes, I have a friend, and this, he actually gets anxiety from road trip movies because, like, why are they out partying? Why are they out doing this? They should be focused on the goal, and especially with tying it to Unfinished Business, where you have people that are trying to close a deal. You have a company of 3 employees led by Vince Vaughn, and they're trying to close this deal. They should be all business, and yet, as Dave Franco's character says, extracurriculars. I'm not even going to begin to try to mispronounce it in the ways that he did. Which, by the way, to me, Dave Franco, his character in this movie, he was phenomenal. To me, he was my absolute favorite of all of this because of the way he acted it. And obviously, they gave him the most funny parts, whereas Vince Vaughn's character was the most straight-laced one. He was all about business and making sure that things got done in the right ways. And yet, despite all that, Apex was a competent company. The numbers were good. As they, so vaguely described it. But yeah, Tom Wilkinson, as experienced as he was in this world, which was a crazy world of metal shredding. I like how, they took the idea of that, usually, right, the story of a MacGuffin. And typically you get a MacGuffin, it's evident in James Bond movies and things like that. It's what the evil guys want or what the characters are after, but it really doesn't, it makes no real difference to the audience. And so in Unfinished Business, what I liked about it was they took that to a whole nother level, because as Vince Vaughn's explaining, he's like, you probably don't care about this at all. And of course, the narration's to his daughter. So a lot going for this film, the balance of corporate life versus versus home life, and tying in real issues of parenting. Is a private school going to better my kid, in the sense of he's no longer going to get bullied, and the daughter's trying to stand up for for her brother, and because obviously Vince Vaughn's character is away, he doesn't have time to help. And what that was, by the way, to kind of open up family life in the way that they did, of Vince Vaughn's character coming into the room thinking that his son is masturbating, but when in reality he's not. He's looking at Facebook and all the various mean things said about him, and how that affects him, and how he couldn't even necessarily fit in with the goth kids. And so this movie overall does have heart in it. Yes, I understand it's not the most raved about movie. It's not the most well-reviewed movie. Certainly, the reception has received mostly negative reviews. Rotten Tomatoes reported a 12% rating based on 84 reviews with an average rating of 3.6 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, "Unfocused and unfunny, unfinished business lives down to its title with a slipshod screenplay and poorly directed performances that would have been better left unreleased." Certainly a little bit harsh. I'm not going to make any bones about it. I understand the shortcomings of this movie, but at the same time, what's great about it is each of these actors, right? Vince Vaughn, Tom Wilkinson, Dave Franco, Sienna Miller, and James Marsden, and Nick Frost. They're experienced actors. Not only, you could argue Sienna Miller and James Marsden known more for the dramatic stuff. Certainly, when I think of James Marsden, I think of The Box. However, the rest of them, especially when you go to someone like Vince Vaughn and Dave Franco and Nick Frost, even though, he wasn't much in the movie in the earlier parts, but then later on, obviously, when it came time to be in Germany, his role was upped. They're comedians, and so if you kind of just give them stuff to work with, they'll, for the most part, make it their own. And I believe that they did. To the best of their ability, and sometimes, again, if it's not on the page, you can't completely make a different scene, but, they took what was there and they made it their own, and for the most part, I think they made it funny. And Dave Franco, with his character of Mike Pancake, really ran with that. And at first, it's one of those jokes like, you're left wondering, wait, what is his last name, and why is this going to be funny? And they kind of set it up in a nice way, in the airplane of, hey, don't say your name, please don't say your name in the meeting. It's distracting, and then just kind of the way it went, and he thought it was, oops, I said my last name. It's like, wait, that's your last name? And he's like, it's Greek. James, it's delicious. Obviously it's in the trailer, but what's nice about it, I think there's usually, talking about trailers, right? And I know I'm kind of shifting every which way all over the board, which is why it helps to have a panel, but, this is more of we'll call it a stream of consciousness anatomy of a movie, right? What's nice about it, in a trailer, you usually get just the funniest moments. And what was nice is you got, yes, some of that stuff, like the Mike Pancake, was revealed in the trailer. However, specifically, I thought one of the funnier things was Vince Vaughn being a human exhibit in Germany, American businessman 42. I thought that was funny. Just the idea alone of here, this guy is trying to do business, and it's, it takes that idea so well and just kind of examines it, the pressures of being, quote unquote, a corporate man is, especially on your family life and trying to get this done. So I rather enjoyed that. So I'm glad. And the Autobahn bits, I thought they were funny. Flugenscheheime, whatever was said, and how they, Mike Pancake's interpretation of that versus Dan's, and how really that became, it could have been Left Turn, but it really took on the whole new meaning of something else, which he brings back to his family. Daniel does, and that became the heart of the story. And even Timothy, he had a nice payoff at the end where him and the maid they find love after all these years, and he's gonna do the wheelbarrow. So production wise, this was shot about mid-November in Boston, Massachusetts, which, by the way, as someone having not necessarily grown up, but knows Boston really well. I went to college there, and it's a city near and dear to my heart. I didn't get that it was in Boston. Obviously, they went up to Portland and there. Then they had to go to Germany, and they came across the various towns. And so for the most part, I didn't get the sense that it took place in Boston also, which, by the way, is very. Boston's such a multicultural city that you can make that happen, and for the most part, they fooled me. So kudos to them for that. But yeah, they shot there, and they went back in for some reshoots as well in there. Now, one of the things that obviously can't be overlooked, unfortunately, but box office numbers, right? So it made so far 4.8 million in North America and 2.6 million in other territories for a total gross of 7 million. And when you compare that to the budget of 35 million, that doesn't include, as Dimitri Panos always says, prints and hard drives. It's obviously not a good number. It finished 10th place at the box office on its opening weekend. So it's got a lot of ground to cover to make back its money. But, which is why I hope fans, hopefully like you that are listening to this, who liked this movie, can sort of support it in our own way, and we can hopefully get a few more other people to support it as well. Because to me, I just love stupid comedy. I really do. I think, and I don't think you get the Dumb and Dumbers and the Billy Madisons and the Road Trips and things like that without there being, more of a cultural shift towards a respect of these types of movies. And I think for us who love these movies, and by the way, Piranha 3D, one of my favorite movies. Any movie that Shark Night that can make me laugh is a movie that I absolutely enjoy. They say movie, you go to a movie to try to escape, and as much as I love the Oscar movies, I really do sometimes go to the movies just to escape and have a good time. And it's movies like this that they kind of have a core message as well, but that really just release the anxieties of everyday life. And so I think they are important, and in order to get to movies like Dumb and Dumber, movies like this one need to be supported, so that way they can be cultivated in the right ways and create that culture. So it's cyclical. More and more movies like this can be made. By the way, I'm not going to get into the story elements too much, just because I can't necessarily bounce things off of people. But if you are watching this and listening to this, feel free to comment. You can tweet at the Popcorn Talk if you want to do it through images. Our Instagram is the Popcorn Talk as well. But comment below and let me know what you are thinking, what some of your favorite scenes were, and I'll go back in and comment along with you guys, so that way we can really build a dialogue, about our favorite moments of the movie. I mean, just, my favorite, absolutely, the fact that they go to a German fetish sex club, and there's glory holes, and Mike's just kind of all excited. I mean, the lengths that these guys are willing to do to close this deal. They go to a spa day and all these various things. That to me was were the funniest bits. And just kind of how incompetent they ultimately were. The wheelbarrow bit where, Mike doesn't know what a wheelbarrow is, and he's kind of fixated on this idea. And when he messes up the first time with the girl, it just cracked me up. And where now you have Timothy as well, kind of trying to find his former glory. so to speak, and be a youth, and he's smoking pot and various things, to the point that it's Vince, it's his character, that has to tell him, pass it on. A lot of overall really funny moments, I think. Not necessarily the through line of which could have been a little bit better, tighter, but coming in at 91 minutes, I mean, why not? So many movies today are just so long, 2 hours, especially if you're going to be a comedy. Why be that long? And to me, if you're going to not necessarily be the great, for lack of a better term, if you're not going to be, you don't have necessarily a winner, why even take the risk of doing an hour and 40, an hour and 50 of a comedy? Just keep it to 90 minutes. Keep it really tight. That way your jokes per minute is increased, and the audience can have some really fun with it. And that's why, to me, I knew it was a no-brainer to go see it, because it's 90 minutes of my time, and yet it's my time, like all your guys' time, is very precious. But in terms of a movie, it didn't feel that bad at all. Meaning for me to go and spend 90 minutes. Now, so I'll kind of read, I want to read a very positive review of Unfinished Business, because it's unfortunately one of the more rare things to find, and so I want to highlight the good stuff. But first, I want to start with a lot of heat is being pointed towards Vince Vaughn, whether or not he can deliver a movie anymore, and the idea that he can't. I mean, this is his fifth kind of underperforming wide release. This movie, Unfinished Business, they opened up in 2,777 theaters on opening weekend. And the overall gross for that weekend is much lower than Delivery Man, which came in at 7.9 million. And so he's not having a string of good movies. The last five, right? I mentioned the last five that he's made have made less than 50 million domestic. That's right after. So the five comes after Couples Retreat, which crossed 100 million in 2009. Now, there's comparisons made of Vince Vaughn to Chevy Chase, and is he having a Chevy Chase-like recession? I don't think so. I think there's a way to bounce back. A nice kind of comparison. Steve Martin was able to bounce back, and he had, which, by the way, people say Lonely Guy was a terrible movie. If you like, if you're someone at home and you feel like, you never get the girl, or that you kind of live a solitary life and you don't have many friends, honestly, Lonely Guy is actually a very funny movie. There might be, if you do identify with that, there could be some sad comparisons out of that, but I think you'll get a laugh, and ultimately know that if you feel that way, you are not indeed a lonely guy. So definitely check out that movie by Steve Martin. But I think they're, these movies, they're very cyclical, as mentioned, both in terms of how they're made, but also from an actor standpoint, where, okay, Vince Vaughn's kind of going through a drought, but I think he can do good again. And I know Adam Sandler, a lot of people say his earlier movies, like Billy Madison, whatever else, they're amazing. Happy Gilmore gets put into that category as well. And some of the more recent ones aren't as good. But I felt, I forget exactly where That's My Boy ended up at, but to me, that was kind of a nice little spark of life into Adam Sandler and types of, I thought that movie was great as well. And so I think Vince Vaughn can be up and up, on the up and up. I'm glad that this all kind of, I'm glad to see these actors together on screen, if nothing else. I think, they're a good cast, and they gave it their all, certainly, so no one can fault them for that. Even Sienna Miller, who's, she plays Chuck, and she's supposed to be this very tough corporate businesswoman, and because how tough she is and how kooky these characters are, the fun, one of the funnier scenes is when the daughter had packed Daniel's running clothes, and that's obviously a running, pardon the pun, running kind of plot point. He needs to run, and we eventually find out the reason why he needs to run. But the point being, he is running around in his wife's running gear, and he passes off his kind of Brazilian attire and whatever else. And Sienna Miller, because she's so straight-laced, the comedy can really hit where he's just trying to make up any example, and she's really just not accepting it, and it becomes a very funny scene. Nick Frost, always funny to me. If you haven't seen him in whether Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and of course The World's End, very, very funny movies where you get to see him in a great role there. So, as promised, let's. I won't read the full thing, but I'll kind of try to give you a little bit of it. This is the rare. I call it the rare positive review of Unfinished Business because I think for someone like you who is watching and listening to this, you've seen the movie, and you enjoy this movie, and so I think this deserves to get highlighted. So, quote. Unfinished Business is not for a person whose palate rejects pumped artificial butter or Bunka Crunch. It is the type of movie my brother and I went on Tuesday mornings during our childhood summers. A mindless comedy perfect for for childhood summer boredom. The Vince Vaughn flick may not satisfy the stingy film critic whose Sundance standards haven't even seen the inside of any mainstream theater, except for the more artsy California theater or maybe the Elwood Theater. We all know the movie category this film fits into. Unfinished Business is the type of film with a marquee comedian who decides to accomplish something, rebuild his gym, or establish a campus fraternity, for example, gets close to reaching his or her goal, falters in what seems like an insurmountable way while also letting down an entire crew of eclectic homies, and finally redeems himself while delivering some pretty sweet messages. Unfinished movie directed by Ken Scott fits the bill. Vince Vaughn's character, Dan Trunkman, attempts to lead a cast of recently unemployed characters to the top of the small business world, and so on and so forth. So, exactly. What I hate is in the film critic space, when you have a movie, give a sense of who would like this movie, rather than you may not like it, but give a sense of, okay, who would actually like this movie? And for 100%, I agree, someone who's bored in the summertime. Now, obviously, this is not a summer movie, but because unfortunately, this is the time of year, quote unquote, that movies get, bad movies get put into, and it's sort of unfair. But I think video on demand, someone who is bored at home could watch this movie and enjoy it. And one of the things that I would urge you guys, Adam Carolla was saying this because he was promoting his movie Road Hard, but he was also helping Vince advertise this movie. And one of the things he said, when you go see a comedy, see it with friends. It's imagine a stand-up comedian, he says, kind of doing his comedy shtick solo in a room, or to one person, right? If you're the sultan of the richest country in the world and you hire a comedian, right, the point is to invite as many friends as you can to enjoy this experience, because that's how humor works. Humor is infectious. And with this type of movie, I hope you guys, whether video on demand that you've seen it, or you actually got a chance to see it in the movie theater, you got to see it with a crowd. Luckily, I had somewhat of a crowd. And overall, my crowd actually did kind of enjoy it. So, I was kind of laughing throughout, and I was with some people who normally don't go see this type of movie, but honestly, I found it funny, and through my laughter, they started picking up. So, I've done my part for this movie. I enjoyed it. Do yours, and let's continue the dialogue here through the Popcorn Talk social avenues to kind of discuss this movie. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for joining us yet another Anatomy of a Movie. You can discuss it at Movie Anatomy is Anatomy of a Movie's Twitter. You can follow us here at the Popcorn Talk Network at the Popcorn Talk on Twitter and Instagram, facebook.com/Popcorn Talk Network. And of course, we'll be back for more Anatomy of Movies here on the Popcorn Talk Network. Subscribe, rate, comment. Thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully, as few of you as there may be that enjoyed this movie, hopefully we're a loud and proud faction, and I'll certainly be back to discuss more movies like this. See you next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.